Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, remember that poor priest who was stabbed for saying Christ is Lord. Well, it turns out that happened, but the Australian government doesn't actually want you to know about it, which is really weird. It almost is like not all cultures are the same, and some people really are trying hard to make Christians out to be the bad guy, even when they get apparently stabbed for it. In other news, Biden versus the teleprompter in the Teleprompter Strikes Back. Then we hear from Robert F. Kennedy on his abortion views, which are interesting. And we take a quick look at the protesters on college campuses across America. One in particular has a really good reason for protesting, or maybe not. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I am Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and really appreciate you stopping by today. If you're listening on audio, we'll have a couple of videos in this particular episode, and you may want to navigate to the YouTubes to watch it on video. If YouTube does not like me for some reason today, I will find another place to host it, like Rumble, and I'll post the link at churchpublic.com so you can go there to check it out. If you're listening on audio or video and you like this, you may want to hit that like button or subscribe or leave a 5-star review or leave a comment. All of those good things that make the algorithm go crazy, however that interweb stuff works. At any rate, I really appreciate it. If this is helpful to you, or you think, hey, maybe this will be helpful to my friend, coworker, family member, etc., go ahead and share this out because that helps them and maybe me too. And if you want to support, you can go to churchpublic.com/support. This is current events from a Christian perspective to help you live out your faith. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get to some news. This first one is, well, rather a sad story. I brought you this same story just a couple of weeks ago, but it took a weird turn, a turn that I honestly did not expect. This is the story of the Australian priest who was stabbed. I brought this story to you the other day, but the weird turn that this took at this point is that apparently the Australian government doesn't want to admit that it happened and doesn't want Australians to know that it happened and doesn't want anyone in the world to know that it happened, even though it did, which is super weird. I showed you this picture before. I told you then, and I will tell you now, that I'm not going to play the video, though the video is widely available on all of the social media places, especially X, formerly Twitter. Apparently, the other meta suite of social medias, it may or may not be available because of what I'm about to talk to you through this particular segment. So, let's recap for those that missed this story for some reason. Again, I brought you the story a couple weeks ago. There's an Australian Orthodox priest, and he was preaching. He was stabbed by a guy, or maybe a bunch of guys. It's a little bit unclear, while he was preaching. Again, here's the picture. I did not want to play the video, and I'm not going to play it now. You can go watch it if you feel like you want to. The essence of the video is that he's preaching about Christ, and he is stabbed. So, I showed you the picture, and you can go and watch the video unless, as I mentioned, you live in Australia. And in Australia, you cannot go watch the video. And I'm going to talk about why in a moment, which is the weird part of this story that I did not see coming. So Australia said to Elon Musk, the now owner of Twitter, hey, or X, dang it, I'm going to get this wrong for the rest of my life. Anyway, Australia, the government, said to X and Elon Musk, you cannot play this video in Australia. You're not allowed to view it at all. So I'm going to read you part of this article via the BBC, and this is a little bit of background on what happened, and then a little bit about what the government of Australia has done since then. So, a 16-year-old boy was arrested after a bishop, a priest, and churchgoers were attacked during Mass at the Assyrian Christ the Good Shepherd Church. This incident was captured on the church live stream, and this is according to the BBC, quickly triggered unrest in the suburb of Wakeley. That is a little bit outside of one of their main cities. The Australian police define terror offenses as being ideologically motivated. Investigations are still underway, but they say they are satisfied this is a case of religious extremism. So I need to pause there and say, the BBC and many other outlets are saying this is religious extremism. I think I have a couple of quotes from the New York Times and I don't remember, Wall Street Journal. Now, I was going to say Washington Post, but it's Wall Street Journal. At any rate, and they all agree this is religious extremism from the attacker. However, I'll read this from the BBC. Authorities have repeatedly declined to state the religion of the alleged attacker. So in the article, it's religious extremism that the attacker attacked this Christian. I'm just going to call him a Christian priest. Yes, it's a different denomination, but he's Christian. They attacked this Christian priest for religious reasons, and the attacker is religious, but we don't know what the religion of the attacker is. Is that strange to anyone? That is strange to me. Like, why? Why would you not say what religion this attacker is? Okay, so let's continue on in this BBC article. Speaking to the media, New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb said the bishop and priest were undergoing surgery and were lucky to be alive. Ms. Webb said the teenager allegedly made comments to the bishop as he approached, which were, quote, centered around religion, end quote. So I'm going to pause again in there and say the BBC article and many other articles that I read about this say the teenager made religious comments to the bishop before he attacked the bishop with a knife, allegedly, I guess I have to say. Anyway, so you can go and see the video of this priest being attacked. And apparently right before this attack, the teenager made religious comments to the priest. So here's the question I think about when I hear this story, when I read the story on many outlets where I read this same story. What was this teenager saying from a religion that we don't know before he stabbed this Christian priest? What did the teenager say? I would like to know. This is the curious thing. Like, I feel like it's important. What did the person say who was religiously motivated, who attacked a Christian and stabbed him? What did he say right before he stabbed him? Doesn't that seem like important information in this story? It seems to me like that's important information in the story. And let me tell you, and this is, it sounds like a brag. I don't know what to tell you. You can ask my friends and family. I'm fairly good at searching the interwebs and finding information. It's just a skill that I have. I'm pretty good at it. I could not find anywhere the comments of this attacker. No one has published it anywhere. I mean, if you find it, send it to me, but I could not find it. No one published the inflammatory religious comments, according to the BBC and many other outlets, that the attacker said before stabbing the priest. No one has published these comments. Isn't this curious? Is this weird? This seems weird. In this free and fair information age where you're supposed to have all the information that you need to figure out what's really going on, this information has been very, very censored. It's very strange. So I went at it the other way. Okay, well, then what was the priest saying right before he was stabbed? And fortunately, we have the live stream video of what the priest was saying right before this. As I mentioned, I'm not going to show the part where the priest is actually stabbed. If you are so inclined, I would say be fair warned, but you can go watch that on social media. Again, I'm not going to link to it. You can go and find it. If you're in America, it is still available. Other countries, no, probably not. But at any rate, I'm going to play just the sermon he was preaching, the words he was saying before. So let's listen to this priest.
Islam till now are fighting fiercely against Christianity. They can say, till kingdom comes, we are a religion of peace. There is only one place where you find peace, when you embrace Jesus Christ as Lord and God.
So, very clearly, the priest is saying, one, Jesus is Lord, and there is no other. Philippians 2, Revelation 20, et cetera, and very clearly that the Nation of Islam, the Muslim faith, is not real in terms of it is a false god. And those are fighting words in certain areas of the world, and I recognize that, but I mean, truth is truth. Jesus was killed for truth. We talked about that last time. The words of Jesus to Pilate, the last words Jesus said to Pilate were, I'm here to bring the truth. And Pilate said, what is truth? This has been a thing for 2,000 and some years at this point, that Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He ascended into glory and sits at the right hand of the Father, where he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Read Matthew 28. So this priest is just basically saying the gospel of this is who Jesus is. It is the true nature of the kingdom of God. And all other religions, in fact, I would extend, are not real religions. He in particular is pointing out a certain religion, which is Islam. So I would extend, this is a guess, pretty educated guess, we don't have to wonder what the attacker was saying or thinking before he stabbed this priest. Again, no one knows because those comments have not been published, though they said it was religiously motivated and the comments were an important piece of this case. No one is going to publish what they are. But it's pretty clear what they are. So then Here's where the story takes another weird left turn. The Australian authorities asked Elon Musk and X to remove the video from Australia, period. Full stop. Just remove the entire video from all of Australia, which Elon did. Elon said, okay, Australia, you're the government of Australia. I will remove this video from Australia. Unfortunately for Elon, that was not enough. They were not satisfied with Elon just removing the video from Australia. The Prime Minister of Australia complained about the fact that people can use their own eyes and ears to see what is real and what is fake, which of course they can't have that freedom because that's misinformation or something. So he complains about the fact that Elon Musk is a terrible American person, which he's from South Africa, but whatever. Listen to this video from the Prime Minister of Australia about the fact that people can view this video outside of Australia.
Well, this guy is showing his arrogance. He's a billionaire over there in the United States who thinks he's above Australian law. And the idea that someone would go to court for the right to put up violent content on a platform shows how out of touch Mr. Musk is.
So the Prime Minister of Australia is saying that Elon is a terrible person for allowing the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression to watch an event that actually happened where a person with religious motivation, according to the BBC and other outlets, attacked a Christian priest for saying that Jesus is Lord. And that's really, really bad, according to the entire country leadership of Australia. So remember, Elon said, sure, Australia, I will not let that video play in Australia. But because the internet is the internet and people know how to get around things like that, they were seeing the video anyway in Australia, which of course is terrible according to the Australian government because truth can't be seen when it goes against narratives that they want you to know. So an Australian senator, Jackie Lambie, probably messed that name up, but said, this is disgusting that Elon is allowing truth to get out. Listen to this one.
Elon Musk has no social conscience or conscience whatsoever. I don't know, whatever Elon Musk is on, it says that that's okay to continue to air that is absolutely disgusting behaviour. And quite frankly, the bloke should be jailed. And the sooner that we can bring rules in or do something about this sort of game playing with our social media, the better off we're going to be. But quite frankly, the power that man has, because of that platform that he's on, it's got to stop. It has absolutely got to stop.
So remember, I'm going to keep bringing this back to your attention. When Australian government said, please don't air this in Australian X, Twitter, Elon said, okay. And now the government, because it's available in the rest of the world, the government of Australia says, well, you can't have it available in any part of the world because we can't have people knowing about this or something. And he's a disgusting bloke. Elon, should be jailed and the key thrown away, according to this Aussie senator. He's an evil supervillain, Elon Musk, and he needs to go to prison to stop letting free speech be free, or something like that. Now, you're sitting there thinking, well, this is just ridiculous, Matt. Like, what does this have to do with anything from a Christian perspective? Well, I think it does have a lot to do from a Christian perspective because freedom is not free unless you can voice the opinion that you have. Free speech is really important, and it's really important to have. And especially allowing events that actually happen to be shown. Why is it so terrible that this event was shown? And the only reason is one religion in particular you cannot criticize at all, and the other religion in particular, it's okay to stab people because nobody cares about Christians. And you have to understand that that really is what is going on here. It's the fact that you cannot criticize certain religions and other religions are so bad, Christianity, according to the government of many countries, then those you can just degrade and put down at any point and no one really cares. And this is a theme that I bring up a lot because it's what's really going on out there. And if you get in too much of a bubble, you won't see it. But it is coming more and more, even to countries near you. If you have, remember, again, I'm just going to say remember, Elon did take it down in Australia, but that was not good enough. He has to take it down everywhere because any truth anywhere can wreck a single lie. If you try to lie and there's any truth at all, it blows the whole lie. I was talking to some friends about this book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn about the Gulag Archipelago. That's what he has titled his book. The essence of it is, to summarize like 1,000 pages in a sentence, you have to keep the lies going on, and anyone, anywhere who breaks the lie and shows the real truth must be disappeared. Again, you can read through the entire book if you want. I think it's a good read. It's a little bit repetitive in the unabridged version. The abridged version is a little less repetitive, but it's valuable to understand that this really happened and really continues to happen, where they must enforce the lie at any price. And if you've gone through the past few years and had your eyes open and been paying attention, you see that certain people are identified immediately who commit crimes, and certain people who commit other crimes are not identified at all. Because you can say if Christians do bad things or white people do bad things, but if other races or other people in certain areas or certain faiths or certain races do things, you're not allowed to talk about it at all. Remember, in California, I showed you this just a few weeks ago. This is a 100% real story. The sheriff's department swapped the criminal lineup for Lego heads. This is not a joke, though it looks like one. They actually put Lego heads on the criminal lineup of the criminals because showing their real faces would be inappropriate because criminals need protection from identity or some wacky thing. This is the weird censorship that's going on. If it's certain criminals doing things, then, or perceived criminals doing things, like those poor people who sat in front of an abortion clinic and sung songs and are now facing 11 years in prison, yeah, you can blast them all over anywhere. But if someone else stabs a Christian in front of everybody on live video, of course you can't show that at all. In the New York Times, they didn't tell you the religion of the attacker. In the Wall Street Journal, in America, they did not tell you the religion of the attacker, and on and on. I looked at a bunch of different articles, and you can say, well, this is just happening in Australia, but the reality is, in America, they're censoring this as well. You can't know that one religion is worse than another. And in fact, the only religion that's bad, according to them, is Christianity. All the other ones are fine. And there's some other ones that are especially super fine and that they love. Getting back to Elon Musk, he stated on a post on X, the Australian censorship commissar is demanding global content bans. That was a quote directly from him. He went on to say, no president, prime minister, or judge has authority over all the earth. And I would say to that, correct. Like, truth is truth. Reality is real. Yes, you maybe there's a warning label that needs to be put on violent content, and it is sometimes terrible. And I chose to not show it to you. But if you want to, you can go to Twitter right now, X right now, and find this video. It's not hard to find, and it's still terrible. But it should be up to you to decide if you want to see it, not the government. When the government steps in and censors the speech that you have, the freedom that you have, all of a sudden you are not free. And I didn't even know this part of it because the story continues to spiral into weirdness. There is currently a global internet censor group formed and working on this. Michael Schellenberger on Twitter and some other places in his Substack went deep into this whole debacle, and here's what Schellenberger said about it. Quote, and now Public, that's the news outlet that he publishes for, learned there's a formal government censorship network called the Global Online Safety Regulators Network, that's a real title apparently, which Australia's top internet censor Julie Inman Grant, who is an American, described at World Economic Forum. The group includes censors from Australia, France, Ireland, South Africa, Korea, the UK, and Fiji, and apparently even more at this point, end quote. Here is Julie Inman Grant talking about using her force to regulate the entire internet. Listen to this.
Yes, we do regulate the platforms. We have a big stick that we can use when we want to. They're going to be regulated, and they're going to be regulated in ways that they don't want to be regulated. So, we also have some pretty significant ISP blocking powers. We just had some new powers given to us.
So she's talking about using some sort of force to regulate the entire internet over the entire globe, apparently. That seems bad to me. But anyway, in addition, through some of these conversations, she also talked about unifying governments around this whole censorship ideal. Let's hear this.
November, and we launched the Global Online Safety Regulators Network so that we could have a forum to help us coordinate, build capacity, and do just that, but also make sure that while we're going to have differences in our regulatory schemes, there would be common values that drive us together. We want to prevent fragmentation and regulatory fragmentation. We know that's a challenge for the platforms as well.
So she does not want the regulation to fragment. In other words, she wants all the regulation across all of the countries in all of the world to point to all of the social media companies and say, you only do what we tell you to do. If that sounds wacky, that's what she's talking about at the World Economic Forum. And that is now the person who is in charge of enforcing social media in Australia. And all they want from you is just your phone number. Listen to this part.
What this legislation will give us the ability to do is to compel basic device information and account information. And more and more social media companies are starting to collect phone numbers and email addresses so that our investigators can at least find a place to issue a notice or a takedown notice or an infringement notice of some sort.
So just a little note, right? They're just gonna take your address and your phone number just to send you a nice little note to tell you to stop saying things online, right? They just want your address just to send you, just to mail you a little handwritten note. Please stop posting things like that, right? They're not gonna come to your address and do worse things to you now that they have your address, right? 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 By the way, I would like to also point out, and listen, I am no expert, but to my ears, her Australian accent is very strange. It almost sounds like this Australian head of the Internet Corporation sounds like an American. Sounds like an American in Australia trying to stop the truth from getting out all over the world. And in fact, that is, of course, true. She's an American who somehow landed in Australia, who now controls the internet in Australia and apparently is trying to control the internet in the whole world. I'm sure that's going to work out really well. Anyway, I wanted to bring you this wacky story because all of it started with some religiously motivated guy who stabbed a Christian for saying Jesus is Lord. I think that's an important piece. And then the whole world apparently cannot know this event even happened because religions can't fight against each other since all roads lead to heaven. Or maybe, as Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. And, just before that, he says, I'm the way, or just after that, he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jesus on that one. All right, let's talk about something else. For all of you out there who love the sports, we're going to the sports. I know. I have friends who know me and know me well and know that I'm not a particularly well-read sports person, and I generally just shout, go sports, in whatever particular sport I'm in. So don't hold this too much against me. But I thought this was an interesting story and interesting enough to talk about from a Christian perspective so that we can understand this world a little better and how to live in it. This particular clip comes from Shaq, the world-famous basketball player, and Kelsey, who just did a bunch of football things. So they're talking. Shaq is giving some advice now that Kelsey has won a bunch of things, and just thinking about, hey, how do you live your life outside of the sports? So I know I promised you sports. It is sports related with the sports superstars, but this really is about family and living. Let's hear from Shaq.
My advice to you is if you are going to retire,
Yes,
accept it. Enjoy your family, brother.
thank you.
I made a lot of dumb mistakes to where I lost my family and I didn't have anybody. That's not the case for you. So enjoy your beautiful wife, enjoy your beautiful kids, and never dwell on what we had.
Yeah.
What we had is what we got. You got the ring. People know who you are. Enjoy it. Because again, I was an idiot, and I've talked about this a long time. Lost my whole family. Spent a 100,000 square foot house by myself.
So that actually is really sad. And if you did not see the video and see some of the captions, just to reframe, basically Shaq is saying, hey, pay attention to your family. Like, sports is cool, fame is cool, celebrity is cool, all that stuff is cool, but it means nothing if you're in, as Shaq said, a 100,000 square foot house all by yourself. He is pretty down on himself and says that he made a bunch of dumb mistakes. I would love to say to him and to anybody that's listening, don't live in the mistakes that you've made, but fight hard to come up with second chances and figure out what you can do. I don't know his full situation, but his advice is actually good. His advice is good, that you should focus on your family and not just focus on power and money and fame and celebrity. They're just not going to satisfy, and they can't. That's the Christian perspective here. Matthew 16:26. What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? So it's really important that we focus in on what really matters, what really drives eternity, and it is not the things of this world. There are a lot of people out there who will say you can just really lean into growing. I happen to, in my childhood, have a poster, the one that ends up with the most toys wins. I didn't realize at the time that's a lie, and it's a lie from the devil. And as sadly, you just heard from Shaq, it doesn't end up where you think it does. And I was fortunate enough to really have Jesus present in my life and have some great mentors that pointed me down the path to know that, yeah, that is not satisfying at all, as Jesus said in Matthew that we just heard. Okay, let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy. Listen, I believe that this presidential race is between two parties, Biden and Trump. That really is the bottom line. One of them will win, barring some wild catastrophe that is unforeseen at this point. However, the powers that be are incredibly afraid of Robert F. Kennedy, and mostly I think that fear is coming from the Democrat camp. Those that actually see Biden for what he is are looking for an alternative. Again, while anything is possible, I think it's very unlikely that RFK will win this year. However, his presence in the election will pull votes from, I think, Biden almost exclusively. Those that are determined to vote for Trump are already decided on that, and I don't think there's any swaying them one way or another. But those that are starting to see what is really going on with Biden, which we'll actually have a clip of in a moment, can't vote Trump, those people. So they don't want to vote for Biden, they don't want to vote for Trump, and they need another option, which is entering Robert F. Kennedy. Now, he says policy things that I can get behind, but almost entirely I disagree with what he believes. He's just a either center-left or even more than a little center-left liberal. So I can't endorse really anything, any policy position that I've heard from him, but I saw in an article earlier this week that he finally spoke out on his views of abortion. And I wanted to highlight this story today. So if you happen to be interested in an alternative, or you happen to think like, oh, maybe he's the guy because he's somewhere in the middle of Biden and Trump, I just want you to understand what he has said to us about abortion, because it's important to understand that it really is an important issue, because we're talking about the lives of babies. We're talking about the lives of people, and whether or not they are murdered. And that, as a Christian, should be really, really important to you. So he's clarified his position on abortion, and that it should be of importance for a believer in Christ. And some of this is from the article that I read in the Christian Post, and I'll read some from a couple other articles as well. So from the Christian Post, the leading third-party candidate for the President of the United States has revealed a new position on abortion, including the proposal to expand child care benefits, prompting mixed reactions from pro-life groups. His platform is titled "More Choices, More Life," and he plugs it as a way to, quote, dramatically reduce abortion in the country, end quote. So that sounds good so far. Let's read on. The candidate is calling for massive subsidized daycare initiative and safeguarding women's reproductive rights. I'm going to pause there and say, already, this doesn't sound like you're saving babies, because you said safeguarding women's reproductive rights, which again is euphemistic for right to choose, which again is euphemistic for killing babies. Like, anytime you're saying anything other than saving babies from creation or from conception on, then you're talking about ending babies' lives. So women's reproductive rights is ending babies' lives. Now, he continues on. He vows that the policy will pay for 100% of care for 3 million children under 5 who live beneath the poverty line, while capping the cost of daycare at 10% of family income for everyone else. Which again sounds nice, but what does it really mean? Continuing on the article, the campaign predicted that, quote, since economics is a major driver of abortion, this policy will do more to lower abortion rates than any coercive measure ever could, end quote. This daycare initiative is called More Choices, More Life, and it calls for an adoption infrastructure. I'll pause there and say, that is nice. Of course, we should have more adoption. And it consists of an increased tax child credit and funding sanctuaries for women in need of having babies, like Angie's House, where they get support in pregnancy and in the precious months afterwards, end quote. So those are all great things, and I love that. And there's tons of pregnancy centers in America already. Most are sponsored by some church because this pro-life ministry generally comes from people who value pro-life, which generally are believers. Robert F. Kennedy's campaign asserted the funding of the organizations ensured women their only choice isn't abortion. Under the policy, the campaign contended women will find they have another choice, a viable choice to give birth. He said in the campaign, abortion is one of the most divisive issues in American politics. I would say I agree. Where Americans, quote, are offered two positions, pro-life and pro-choice, with hardly any room between or outside of them. Democrats, this is according to the campaign, Democrats led by President Joe Biden have embraced the pro-choice position that enables women to have abortions throughout most or all of pregnancy. Correct. I'll end the article there and talk about it a little bit from a Christian perspective. I need to point out that he's still saying women have the quote-unquote right to choose. And I'll add, again, that means murdering your baby. The choice is the ending the life of a baby. There just is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's what it is. So this idea that there is a third way in between pro-life and pro-choice it's just imaginary. It's not real. It's not coherent. You can't do that. If you want more information on that, I went on for a long, long time in a previous episode about this idea that there's somewhere in between. This idea that either you value the life of a baby from conception, or you say abortion is necessary up into birth and sometimes even past birth in some states, a la Virginia. So there is no place in between that. Like you can try to come up with a place in between that, but the reality is it's incoherent. Once you say there's an imaginary line at 6 weeks or 15 weeks or 24 weeks or whatever weeks it is, you have made a determination for God that that is when a baby becomes alive. But as we know, based on just reality, medical equipment that we can see babies in the womb, that's just not true. Babies move, grow, develop long before even 6 weeks. Which of course is reality because any biologist, any 8th grade person who's gone to biology class knows that at the point of conception, an embryo begins to develop. That's just how science works, basically. But people can't visualize that, so they have to say, well, let's just put an arbitrary week on it. At any rate, there's no middle way. I don't want to keep going on and on about that today. Go back and listen to the other episode if you want to hear about that. So, my point in Robert F. Kennedy is, you can credit him for helping women find alternates to abortion. I think that's wonderful. I think adoption ministries are wonderful. I think pregnancy centers are wonderful. We should have more of both of those. But if the underlying foundation of him and his campaign is ultimately it's a choice for women to keep or kill their baby, your foundation is broken. It's faulty. It cannot last. You cannot get past that point. And at some point you will compromise because your foundation is, well, sure, a woman can still choose. So, you can't have that place and be consistent from a Christian perspective. If you're subsidizing daycare, that's the wrong move. It sounds nice. It may sound really wonderful and empathetic, and I know some women need to work and need daycare. But I would propose the better subsidy would be encourage women to stay home, take care of their own children with, and this is very important, with their husbands. That is the real conservative and Christian perspective. Make it easier to have a family with a mom and a dad and a child. Make that easier. That's a real conservative and a real wonderful and a real Christian value that we can propose. Just to propose, hey, there can be more daycare is really coming from a feminist perspective because it says that women can be just as successful and good as men, and so they are then interchangeable, and they don't have any value in the home where they're best. The thing that only women can do is birth children. That's just reality. And once you eliminate that and say, well, women can do anything a man can do, then you're just making excuses for feminism to run rampant and allow the roles, the values of a woman and a man to be interchangeable, and you end up in this weird place where Supreme Court justices say, I can't tell you what a woman is. What is a woman? I don't know. It's the same road, just a little bit further behind. So it also is important to notice that in this statement, and I read through a bunch of it that I didn't even include today, you can go read it if you want on his website, it does not make mention of any abortion limits at all. So That's really important because he's still saying women should have a right to choose, and he has not endorsed any limit to abortion at all. You may still be mad at Trump and the limits he presented. I can sympathize with that. I would like Trump to be more hardline. However, of the candidates so far, he is the most conservative, even if you don't like him. The limits he presented are not great, but RFK has not presented any limits at all, and that's a bigger problem. Okay. Whew, I kind of railed on that a little bit. I got kind of fired up, but it fires me up when people kill babies. It fires me up. It should fire you up. We should not be able to function knowing that so many babies are killed. It is so frustrating to me. At any rate, okay, we're gonna make a hard left turn here because we're talking about babies, and now we're gonna talk about someone else who can't talk. Ugh, that was a terrible segue. At any rate, you probably have seen this clip, but I think it's important to point out too, and that is Biden versus the teleprompter. This is the teleprompter spikes. I can't even say it. Now I'm infected with it and I can't talk. Biden versus the teleprompter, and the teleprompter strikes back. That would have been an amazing transition, but I just completely blew it, and I wasn't even reading off a teleprompter. At any rate, you probably saw this, and this is a part where he is fighting with the teleprompter, and in the teleprompter, he then is at this place where apparently they scripted this piece that he would have 4 more years, and those 4 more years would then be a place where people would pause and chant 4 more years, because that's what apparently was scripted to do. They were going to script, hey, 4 more years, and then people were going to chant 4 more years, 4 more years, or whatever. What happened was a little bit different. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Here we go.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. 4 more years.
It's so sad. It's just really sad. It's really sad, people. So, as you heard, that I think what was supposed to happen is he was supposed to say 4 more years, and then the crowd, apparently who was prepped for it, was supposed to say and chant 4 more years. Instead, he said 4 more years, pause, which I assume on the teleprompter was in parentheses, which is really sad. So, Biden is 81 years old currently. He will be 86 if he is reelected and leaves office after this 2024 term. This kind of thing should be the final thing that seals the deal, showing that he cannot function as president and hasn't been able to for a long time. But of course, this will never happen. No one cares. They've already decided. And here's the thing that I keep trying to get across, because I have great and really smart friends. You are listening. If you're listening to this, you're already above the waterline, and you're smarter than most. I'm giving that to you. What you have to realize, though, is this is not about logic. It's not about rationalism. It's about fighting your enemies. And this is the problem in Christian circles sometimes. And for a couple of decades, many decades at this point, especially in church, we've been told that you have to be nice, you have to be kind, and no one is your enemy. You have to love your enemy. But what we fail to realize in that is they view us as an enemy. And so we functionally are enemies. We have to understand that while we can love everyone, they think we're an enemy, and they're treating us like an enemy. The left believes the people on the right are their enemy. They view the entire world through this power dynamics. If you have real or even perceived power based on who you are, your skin color, your living status, whatever, you are the enemy to the left. You are. And then you must be defeated at all costs. The West, white people, Christians, families, and now Jews, as we'll see in a moment, those are all lumped into this power circle, and the left hates everyone in it. So what does that have to do with Biden making a flub reading the parentheses on a teleprompter? Well, it doesn't matter. What it means is it doesn't matter that he can't read a teleprompter to save his life. He can't have a full sentence to save his life. It doesn't matter that he goes from weird whispers to angry yelling, and that he's clearly struggling through this. It doesn't matter as long as he's the instrument to beat the right, to beat the power that they perceive. He speaks poorly, but he's still speaking to power, and that's all that matters. We have seen over and over that reality really doesn't matter. We see this over and over. Boys can literally be girls, according to the left. Injections that harm your heart are apparently good for you. Paper covers for your face that literally don't do anything will kill your grandma if you don't wear them. The truth doesn't matter as long as you're removing power from the bad people, according to them, and giving it back to the good people. But here's the problem. Who gets to decide who is good and who is bad? Well, of course, the people in power that are actually in power get to decide this. I would point to the Bible and say the Bible gets to decide who's good and bad because it scripts very clearly who is good and who is bad based on what they do. But this government and the governments around the world say, no, you get to decide who's bad and who's not based on who you are or what you look like or who they say is bad. So sad as it is to see Biden declining in health and mental acuity, it doesn't matter. Those that hate the right and white people and Christians and Donald Trump will continue their fight against us as long as humanly possible, and nothing, not even reality, will stand in their way. Speaking of reality, I saw this clip. I know I'm kind of running a little long today, but man, I just haven't talked for a while, and apparently I have a lot to talk about. This clip, it just summarizes the protesters that are protesting on college campuses. I'm not going to get into these protesters too much. There is a lot that's going on at Columbia, at some universities in Washington. There was a university in Texas, which was a funny story because the national or the state police came out. And anyway, I'm not going to get into much of that because you've probably seen it all over the news. It is terrible. Anti-Semitism is terrible. Wishing people dead is terrible, and chanting all of that is terrible. But what I saw in this clip, I think, was illuminating both of the protests that are going on, what we've been talking about, power, and church as well. So I'm going to tie all these things together in a nice little bow at the end after we watch this video about this protester who is supporting something.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU is doing.
Is there something that NYU is doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU is doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
So, it's such a good one. Again, if you were just listening, that's fine. There wasn't a lot to see in that clip. It was just a student from, apparently she said NYU, who then went down to Columbia, or no, sorry, she was at Columbia, then went down to NYU. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's a student at one of these super expensive, super liberal colleges at this point, or leftist even at that point, if you want to say, who says, what are we protesting again? Like, why are we here? What are we doing? She apparently doesn't know. She's saying, yeah, we have to fight for Palestine. Why? What is this college doing against Palestine or pro-Israel or whatever? And the answer is, I have no idea. The other girl, this one girl who has one of those septum piercing things, kind of looks like a bull, turns to another person who's there, another girl who's wearing a mask, and says, do you know what we're protesting? Do you know why we're here? And she goes, yeah, I have no idea. I wish I had more education on this, which I think illustrates a couple of things. One, it illustrates that these people are just going along to get along, and they're just swept up into I was going to say fun, because I think they believe this is fun. It's something to do. It's exciting that you go and protest. They have no idea what they're protesting. They don't know why they're protesting. They don't know what they're protesting for. Some do, for sure, and I want to break some categories in a second. But many of these people who are there literally have no idea what they're doing, and make it very clear that the education they're receiving at these tens and tens of thousands of dollars per year, Ivy League, really great, quote unquote, great schools, are getting no education at all. They don't know history. They don't know politics. They don't know political science. They literally don't know anything. And they admit, I don't know. I don't know why we're here. We just heard some people say that we should be here, so we came down, and we're here. We're protesting because this is the thing to do. This is the right thing to do, to protest. No idea why. I mean, we're just doing it. And now, I know that's not everybody, because on the left, in these pro-Palestine protesters, I think you have three groups. You have one group that is the money. There definitely is a lot of money. People just don't show up by the thousands and camp out in colleges for free, because you have to eat, you have to do things, you have to work, unless someone is paying. So there's clearly big money backers who are backing all of this on the left. Then you have a category of true believers. I know the people, like you heard them on the megaphones, you heard them there. I think those people who are on megaphones, social media, promoting all this are true believers. I think that segment is probably small, but there is a segment of true believers that really believe that Jews should be murdered all across the earth and Hamas and Palestine are the best thing ever. They clearly don't understand the reality of the situation, but this is what they truly believe. They are true believers. And then the rest, I think, are just followers, just like this poor student and her friend who don't know anything about anything, but just said, hey, there's a quote unquote party or protest, and I guess those are the same thing at this point. We should go be part of that for reasons. What are the reasons? I have no idea. And that's where I want to make this transition, because there's a couple things going on. We see this over and over again. And we saw it through the BLM riots, that there clearly were big money backers, there clearly were true believers, and then there was everybody else who just followed along. And then we realized that they did a lot more harm than any good at all. And this is the same group. It's the same groups showing up doing the same things for quote unquote different reasons, but really the same reason, just to protest power, as I mentioned in the earlier segment. It's all about power, and in their words, speaking truth to power. Though they don't understand what the truth is or where the truth comes from, they just need to speak it, or yell it, or scream it, or break stuff. That's just how this works. Which leads me to this point that I think is true as I've been thinking about it. This protesting, this activism is their form of church. It is leftist church. Someone on the internet said this. I did not invent this. I can't remember who said it, so I apologize. If it was you, let me know. But it's absolutely true. Protesting is the church of the left. In real church, you have the devout believers that are there. That's very true. But then you have a large section of church attendees who just go. They go to find structure, community, friends, but they don't really believe what the church believes. Many don't even know what the church believes. As a former pastor and current ministry leader, this has been something that's been really frustrating to me. Most people have no idea what the Bible says because they either don't read it or have never read it. Like, here's a fun test. Ask a random churchgoer where in the Bible Paul meets Jesus. Sure, some people will know. Many people that I've asked that to have no idea. Or here's an easier question. Where in the Bible is the story of Noah or Moses? Just pick anybody. Pick any character in the Bible. How about Nehemiah? Do they know where Nehemiah is? I don't know. Some of you Bible people who are listening right now is like, that's ridiculous. Everyone knows that. Let me just tell you that a lot of people I've run into who attend church have no idea. They have no idea about any of these things. And that's a real problem. It's a real problem in the church. And I've been talking about that on other places. I'm not going to get into that in depth today, but it is a real problem. And as we just heard, it's clearly a real problem in the country at the higher education institutions. They don't know anything about anything. They don't know history. They don't know science. They don't know political science. They don't know reality. They just have to be activists. They just have to protest. It's the church that they go to. This lady, as sad and deluded as she is, heard there was a protest around and said, well, I needed to come down because we heard that police were here and so we needed to protest. What are you protesting? I don't actually know. I just heard that I was supposed to be part of this. And this is a problem. And by the way, this is a problem why on the right we just don't have the same thing. If you look at for a one, like the left has protests all the time and they're growing and they keep appearing all over the place. But the right doesn't have this. I mean, maybe they have the March for Life, which is amazing, and I'm definitely in support of, but that's clear in what it's about, and people show up for it. But the reality is people just don't go because the right is different. The right is different from the left. The right is based in truth, and the problem is then the right has no or very few giant financial backers that want to disrupt all of society. They just don't have that. Now, they do have the true believers. Of course they do, but it's a small group. And so things like the March for Life do end up with people marching, and those are true believers. And yes, of course, there are some followers, but most of the followers will just stay home because they don't believe it all the way. So why would they go? And they have something like church, so they go to church and they do other things, which is why then every event that the right has is just generally smaller because only the true believers really show up. This leftist church, this is a leftist idea, this leftist idea of protest, the religion of protest, the church of protest, they've been brought up in schools for their entire lives to find and partner in activism. That's been the public school education. Their entire public school education has been a precursor and a practice for showing up and doing activism. Of course, it's only left-wing activism, which is why now we're seeing it explode on college campuses. I've had people say, why is this happening in college campuses? Like, what is going on with these college students? And the answer is, this is the expression of their entire education. Their entire education in the public school system leads them to find and partner with activist groups, and by nature, they are exclusively and all on the left. And so when they find something like this, they say, oh, this is the thing. This is the thing that I need to do. So once again, to repeat myself over and over again, there really are just two ways. Either you go to church, build a community of followers of Christ, or you build a community of people who follow the latest thing, and they may not even understand what that is, but they have to follow the latest thing. So it is either Christ or chaos. There is only one way, and it is up to you to choose. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, I hope that you will keep the faith. Well, once again, thank you so much for stopping by. I am your host, Matt Odegaard, and if this was helpful to you, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, share it with a friend, and of course, support at churchpublic.com/support. Love you guys, and I will see you soon.